The dying light, the last star fortress of the Galactic Federation, burned against the cold darkness of space. Admiral Sarah Chun pressed her six-fingered hand against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching another defense platform explode. In brilliant orange flames, the harvester swarms moved like metallic locusts through the debris, their ships pulsing with an alien hunger that had already consumed 47 star systems. "Status report," she called to her bridge crew, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The mixed species around her worked frantically at their stations. A Zelani officer's crystalline features flickered with stress patterns, while a Corvan engineer's scales had turned deep purple with anxiety. 17% of our fleet remains operational, Admiral, reported Commander Zektar, his insectoid, mandibles clicking nervously. The Harvester Collective has adapted to every weapon system we've deployed. Energy shields, quantum torpedoes, even the Phantom-class stealth fighters. Nothing surprises them anymore. Sarah nodded grimly. The Harvesters were unlike any enemy the Federation had faced in its 1,000-year history. They didn't conquer worlds. They consumed them entirely, converting every atom of matter into more of their kind. Their collective intelligence learned from every battle, adapted to every strategy, and grew stronger with each victory. The communication array suddenly sparked to life with an unfamiliar signal. Lieutenant Yara, a young Talaxian with large purple eyes, looked up from her console in confusion. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown fleet. They're requesting permission to join our defensive formation." "Unknown fleet?" Zektar as antennae twitched. "All Federation forces are accounted for. Who could possibly be coming to help us now?" The main view screen flickered and displayed the image of a being Sarah had never seen before. The creature was bipedal with pale skin, dark hair, and small eyes that somehow seemed to hold both intelligence and determination. Behind him, she could see what appeared to be a primitive but functional bridge. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth Navy," the alien said, in surprisingly clear Federation standard. "We've come to assist in your fight against the Harvester threat, requesting coordinates for fleet integration." The bridge fell silent except for the constant beeping of proximity alarms. Sarah stared at the strange being on the screen. "United Earth Navy? I'm not familiar with your species or your government. How did you learn about our situation?" "Captain." Webb smiled, an expression that translated as both confident and slightly reckless. "Your distress signals reached our listening posts about 6 months ago. We've been traveling at maximum speed ever since. As for who we are, we're humans from the Sol system. We're new to interstellar travel, but we're not new to fighting impossible odds." Commander Zektar stepped forward, his compound eyes gleaming with skepticism. "With respect, Captain Webb, this is not a conflict for newcomers. The Harvester Collective has destroyed civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. What could a species that has barely left their home system possibly contribute?" "Maybe a fresh perspective," Webb replied calmly. "How many ships do you have left, Admiral?" Sarah hesitated before answering. 237 operational vessels. "We have 52 ships," Webb said. "Not as many as you, but each one carries something the Harvesters haven't seen before. Human stubbornness." On the tactical display, Sarah watched as the human fleet came into sensor range. Their ships were unlike anything in Federation records. Where Federation vessels were sleek and efficient, built for long-term exploration and diplomatic missions, the human ships looked like they had been designed specifically for war. Thick armor plating, multiple weapon hardpoints, and angular designs that prioritized function over aesthetics. The largest ship in the human formation was truly massive, nearly twice the size of Sarah's flagship. It moved with surprising grace for something so large, and its hull bristled with weapons she didn't recognize. "That's the UE's Perseverance," Webb explained, noticing her attention. our flagship. She's carrying some experimental technology we think might help even the odds. What kind of technology? Sarah asked. The kind that thinks differently than your enemies do, Webb replied cryptically. Admiral, we know you don't have any reason to trust us. We're strangers from a backwater system with primitive ships and no combat experience against the harvesters. But sometimes the best solution comes from someone who doesn't know the problem is supposed to be impossible. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were exhausted, demoralized, and running out of options. In the past 6 months, every tactical innovation had failed, every weapon upgrade had been neutralized, and every desperate strategy had ended in defeat. What did they have to lose by trying something completely different? Very well, Captain Webb. Transmit your fleet composition and tactical capabilities. We'll integrate your forces into our defensive matrix. Actually, Admiral, we were hoping you might consider a different approach, Webb said. Instead of another defensive battle, what if we went on the offensive? Zektar's mandibles clicked in what Sarah recognized as either laughter or disbelief. Offensive? Captain, we've tried offensive operations. The harvesters adapt to our attack patterns within minutes. They turn our own strategies against us. That's because you fight like civilized beings, Webb replied. The harvesters expect logical, predictable tactics. They expect you to minimize casualties, preserve your ships, and fight according to established military doctrine. They've learned to counter all of that. Sarah frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we fight like humans, Webb said simply. Unpredictably, irrationally, with complete disregard for conventional wisdom. The harvesters can adapt to logical strategies, but can they adapt to complete chaos? On the sensor display, new contacts appeared at the edge of the system. The harvester fleet was massive, easily 3 times the size of the combined human and Federation forces. Their ships moved in perfect formation, a testament to their collective intelligence and tactical superiority. They'll be here in 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Yara. Estimated force strength, over 2,000 vessels. Sarah felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. In 6 hours, they would face an enemy that had never been defeated. With allies they had just met, using tactics that went against everything she had learned in 40 years of military service. Captain Webb, she said finally, what exactly are you proposing? Webb's image smiled again, and this time Sarah saw something in that expression that reminded her of why her people had once been explorers and pioneers. It was the look of someone who saw opportunity where others saw only disaster. Admiral, we're proposing to do what humans do best, he said. We're going to break every rule in the book, try things that shouldn't work, and keep fighting until we either win or there's nothing left to fight with. The harvesters think they understand warfare because they've defeated every logical strategy you've thrown at them. But they've never fought an illogical species before. The tactical display showed the harvester fleet continuing its steady advance, their ships maintaining perfect spacing and optimal formation. They moved with the confidence of a force that had never known defeat, never been surprised, never had. To adapt to anything truly unexpected. Sarah made her decision. All ships, prepare for fleet integration with human forces. We're going to try Captain Webb's approach. She paused, then added, and may the ancestors help us all. As the human and Federation fleets merged into a single formation, Sarah noticed something interesting on the tactical display. The human ships didn't maintain the precise formations favored by Federation doctrine. Instead, they moved in loose clusters, with individual vessels making seemingly random course corrections and speed changes. It looked chaotic, unprofessional, almost primitive, but as she watched, Sarah began to see the pattern beneath the chaos. The humans weren't following standard tactical doctrine because their doctrine was fundamentally different. Where Federation forces sought to minimize risk and maximize efficiency, the humans seemed to embrace uncertainty and adaptability. "Admiral," Captain Webb's voice came over the communication system. "We'd like to share our tactical assessment with your command staff. If you're willing to think outside conventional parameters, we might have found the Harvester's weakness." Sarah looked out at the approaching enemy fleet, then at the strange new allies who claimed they could do what no one else had managed. The galaxy was dying. Her civilization was on the brink of extinction, and their only hope lay with a species that had been traveling the stars for less than a century. "Send over your tactical data, Captain," she said. "Let's see what humans think differently about." The next few hours would determine whether humanity's arrival marked the beginning of a new hope, or simply added another species to the Harvester's list of consumed civilizations. Asterisk the human way the combined fleet hung in space like a constellation of defiance against the approaching darkness. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching the Harvester swarm grow larger on the tactical display. Behind him, the ship's artificial intelligence hummed quietly, processing more data than any biological mind could comprehend. "Arya, show me the pattern analysis," Webb commanded. The AI's holographic avatar materialized beside him. Unlike the rigid, predictable interfaces used by Federation technology, Arya appeared as a shifting geometric pattern that seemed to pulse with its own thoughts. "Pattern recognition complete, Captain. The Harvester Collective demonstrates consistent behavior in 17 key tactical areas. However, their adaptation protocols show a critical limitation." Admiral Sarah Chun's image appeared on the communication screen, her alien features tense with concentration. "Captain Webb, our sensor arrays show the Harvester fleet will reach engagement range in 47 minutes. Are you ready to explain this unconventional strategy of yours?" Webb nodded. "Admiral, the key insight came from our AI analysis. The Harvesters adapt perfectly to logical tactics because their collective intelligence processes information the same way every time. They expect rational responses to threats, predictable formations, and strategic decisions based on preserving maximum force strength. That's exactly how we've been fighting them," Commander Zektar interjected from his position on Sarah's bridge. "And they've countered every move we've made." "Because you've been playing their game," Webb explained. "Arya, show them the simulation." The tactical display shifted to show a three-dimensional battle scenario. Federation ships moved in perfect formation, executing textbook maneuvers against Harvester forces. Each time the Federation tried a new tactic, the enemy adapted within minutes, turning the strategy against itself. "Now watch this," Webb said. The simulation reset, but this time the attacking fleet moved chaotically. Ships broke formation randomly. Weapons fired at seemingly empty space, and entire squadrons made suicidal charges that accomplished nothing obvious. But somehow, the chaotic force began to win. "I don't understand," Sarah said. "Those tactics make no strategic sense." "Exactly," Webb replied. "The Harvesters can't adapt to tactics that don't make sense because their collective intelligence keeps trying to find the logic behind the chaos. They waste processing power analyzing random moves, looking for patterns that don't exist, and preparing counters for strategies that aren't actually strategies." Arya's form pulsed brighter. "Human tactical doctrine incorporates what your species calls organized confusion. Your military history shows consistent success when conventional approaches fail. The Harvesters have no reference point for this type of warfare." On the sensor display, the Harvester fleet entered the outer system, their ships moving in flawless coordination. Each vessel was a dark mirror of technological perfection, and together they formed a wave of destruction that had swept across dozens of star systems. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Webb ordered. Federation forces, maintain your current positions that be ready to adapt to rapid changes in tactical situation. Human units, implement protocol chaos. Sarah watched in fascination as the human ships suddenly broke every rule of space combat she had ever learned. Some vessels accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet. Others began moving in seemingly random directions, and a few simply stopped dead in space. The Perseverance itself started broadcasting what appeared to be music on all communication frequencies. "Captain Webb, what are your ships doing?" she asked. "Confusing the enemy," Webb replied calmly. "Aria, initiate the Madness Protocol." The AI's holographic form shifted into something resembling a smile. "Gladly, Captain." Beginning unpredictability. Cascade in 3, 2, 1. What happened next defied every principle of organized warfare. The human fleet began executing maneuvers that seemed designed to get them killed. Ships dove into asteroid fields, flew backwards toward the enemy, and opened fire on empty space. Several vessels began spinning end over end while maintaining full speed, and others started broadcasting random signals that sounded like everything from cooking recipes to philosophical debates. The Harvester fleet, which had been advancing in perfect formation, suddenly began to slow. Their ships started making minor course corrections, then larger ones, as their collective intelligence tried to process the inexplicable behavior of their opponents. "It's working," Lieutenant Yara reported from her sensor station. "The Harvester formation is becoming irregular. They're wasting energy on course corrections and threat assessments." Sarah stared at the tactical display in amazement. The enemy fleet, which had moved like a single organism for months, was beginning to fragment. Individual ships were breaking formation to analyze specific human vessels. Others were attempting to predict movement patterns that didn't exist. And the entire collective seemed to be having the equivalent of a mechanical nervous breakdown. "Now, we hit them," Webb announced. "All human units, execute surprise party." The seemingly chaotic human ships suddenly revealed the method behind their madness. Those vessels that had been spinning were actually using their rotation to charge exotic weapon systems. The ships broadcasting random signals had been coordinating a massive electronic warfare attack. Even the music had been hiding targeting data in its harmonic structures. The human fleet struck the confused Harvester formation like a hammer hitting glass. Weapons that the enemy had never encountered tore through their previously impenetrable defenses. The Harvesters tried to adapt, but each time they began to understand one human tactic, the humans changed to something completely different. "Federation forces, now's your chance," Webb called out. "Hit them while they're distracted." Sarah didn't hesitate. "All ships, full attack formation. Target the largest Harvester vessels while their coordination is disrupted." The Federation fleet surged forward, their weapons finally finding targets that couldn't instantly adapt to the incoming fire. Quantum torpedoes that had been useless for months suddenly began punching through Harvester hulls. Energy beams that had been countered and redirected started finding their marks. On the Perseverance, Aria's holographic form pulsed with what could only be described as satisfaction. "Captain, the Harvester Collective is experiencing what humans might call a panic response. Their adaptation protocols are overloading as they attempt to process 17 different types of irrational behavior simultaneously." Webb watched as more Harvester ships began to fall. "How long until they adapt to our chaos?" "Unknown, Captain. This is the first time in recorded history that the Harvester Collective has encountered truly unpredictable opponents. Their adaptation may take hours instead of minutes." Hours was enough. The combined human and Federation fleet pressed their advantage, using the window of confusion to destroy Harvester vessels faster than they could be replaced. The enemy's perfect coordination crumbled as individual ships began making independent decisions, breaking the collective intelligence that had made them so formidable. Admiral Chun, Webb said as the battle continued to turn in their favor. I think it's time your people learned some human tactics. This war isn't over yet, but now we know how to fight it. Sarah looked at the tactical display, watching Federation and human ships working together in ways that would have been impossible hours earlier. The humans had done the impossible. They had found a way to surprise an enemy that learned from everything. Captain Webb, she said, on behalf of the Galactic Federation, I formally request that humanity consider joining our alliance permanently. Webb smiled that strange human expression again. Admiral, we'd be honored. But fair warning, working with humans means getting used to a whole lot of organized chaos. As the last Harvester ships retreated from the system, broadcasting signals that sounded almost like confusion to the Federation translators, Sarah realized that this battle had changed everything. The galaxy now had hope again, and it had arrived, in the form of a species that refused to accept that some problems were impossible to solve. The war against the Harvesters was far from over, but for the first time in months, Sarah believed they could actually win. All it had taken was learning to think like humans, unpredictably, irrationally, and with complete faith that there was always another way to approach any problem. In the depths of space, the Perseverance's AI continued processing data already, planning new forms of creative chaos for the next engagement. After all, as Arya had learned from studying human behavior, the best defense against predictability was never being predictable in the first place. Asterisk.